welcome to another episode of the Scramble. I'm your host, Sarah Montes de Oca. Today, we'll discuss the rising costs of raising children in the United States. Next, we'll talk about some law schools and their elimination of the LSAT in their admission process. Finally, we'll take a look at the decline of for-profit colleges highlighted by the recent lawsuits that have been levied against them. Before we dive in, let me introduce our panel. First, we have Hunter Terry, a UNLV alum.
Thank you.
Jason Thompson, a graduate student in journalism and media studies. James Schaefer, a sophomore in journalism. And lastly, we have Nakia Berry, a senior in journalism and media studies. Let's get started. Thanks for joining us. The cost of raising children has hit an all-time high, and the cost of childcare continues to increase faster than inflation. Although inflation and childcare can certainly be factors, are families still able to support their children? Are middle-class children becoming too expensive to raise because of college tuition costs and other amenities? So who wants to start?
My whole stance on this is that people should not be so concerned with having kids and growing up, getting married, having kids, or having kids before you get married, and that for the broken families even contribute to this as well. You don't have to have kids to be fulfilled in life. There's a lot of efforts that we should be concentrating on and helping our society, our world, our economy. That's why we're talking about this subject anyways.
So don't go beyond your means, pretty much.
Basically.
Right. And when it comes to the costs, although we look at one of the largest costs for parents for children, it comes to housing, childcare, education, and things like food. But one other thing I'd like to point out, other than the stereotypical child who wants the newest iPhone, is something that has also infiltrated the family, the atomic family of this era, and that is that children have allergies. They have to have organic food. They have to have all these organic goods. They must have diapers that are better. They must have the stroller that is the best. They must have. There is this way about parents more recently that is materialistic. But not only that, but going beyond their means in a certain case. And I think when we look at these parents, we should also be looking at the choices they're making for their children in correlation to the products that they are buying. They're not buying amongst their means, they're buying above those means. They're buying the best stroller, the best crib, for things like stories that are coming out about babies dying in cribs. My God, I must get the best crib so my child doesn't die. There's a bit of a hysteria to it, and because of so, companies take advantage of that by charging more.
And that has to do with consumerism. All the ads we see daily, and then parents just letting their children watch TV, and then they're born to be consumers from the commercials they see as a young child.
But nonetheless, that responsibility falls on the parents in order to make the best decision.
So living below or above the means. Jason, what do you think? Do you think that how birth control how people are handling having children, and it costs $250,000 to raise a single child, and that does not include college tuitions or private education if paid for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a child right now, and then stepchilds too. And I don't know, but they're not that expensive, I don't think. They're just little. They can't eat that much, right?
Right.
And diapers. We're kind of hippie-like in a way, and try not to even have diapers or cloth diapers and just let her go outside. Right. And, like in other cultures, you can do it on the cheap, I think, if you do it the way I do it. And, I say no a lot. You can't get all this stuff.
Hunter, what do you think?
I think the problem has to do with economics. As we mentioned, the cost of raising a child has grown and outpaced the cost of inflation, the rise of inflation. But the opposite's true of middle-class income. Middle-class income is stagnated, has not kept up with inflation. So it's not just that things are becoming more expensive, but they're becoming more expensive at a rate that we can't afford to pay for them. And so if you're thinking you're living the middle-class lifestyle, or at least you're making middle-class money, if you're waiting until it's all within your means, you might never get there. And people want to have children. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. And I do agree that the race to have children, that seems silly. Wait till you do have the resources until you're set up to succeed. But that may be different for a lot of people. Being set up to succeed for someone who's not rich could just be we're not living week to week anymore. We're not living paycheck to paycheck trying to make it work. And childcare I mean, it's important, and that's one alternative is to definitely keep it much cheaper than it was, to not worry about all of the things you talked
My
about.
wife, she's at home taking care of the child right now, and then later she'll go to school. You know, that's
So you take turns.
We take turns, I guess, because otherwise, yeah, it's so expensive.
But you
have to
believe
figure
that
out
then you
ways
do live within your limits, and
Sometimes we go over our limits, and sometimes we're broke. But I don't know. It would be nice. I mean, I was working at one time, but I, don't have that job. But now I'm gonna have to, get back into it and make money for the family. It's very important. It's hard though.
I think
right?
that something else is very important is looking at where a majority of these families are. I mean, we've experienced the mass urbanization of the family community, not just the household, but the community that they live in. I mean, if we look at the U.S. Department of Agricultural Study and the study that they showed, and the difference between a rural family community and a northeastern family community, the difference is for, like, say, in rural is $193,000 as compared to the more modern family, say in New York City, Washington, D.C., or what else have you, is about $282,000.
do you think it's the surroundings also?
It's the surroundings and the nation. We shouldn't always just look at the United States and also look at our neighbors. In England, they're the amount that they have to spend, that it is approximated between the ages of 1 to 21 for parents. In England, it's $342,000 US, as compared to the current one that we're talking about, which is $290,000 US. So that's about a $50,000 to $60,000 difference. And the way that we look at that is through the mass urbanization of the community. You're looking at communities that are relying more on commodities, are becoming more materialistic. And I mean, I don't want to knock the rural family's income or expenses. I'm going to tell you, I have a family that's a rural family, and a horse costs a lot. So
Childcare was you'd go out and work in the barn.
right, there you
That's
go.
your childcare.
Well, just to shop out some of that, you said it was till 21 was the numbers in Britain? I think it was till 18 for the numbers for the American estimate.
Right, and the one I looked at was there'd be a 45,000 estimate added onto that, which is the one that we currently have, which
Right.
would equal 290,340.
Well, the other thing you have to look at is just like, say the cost of childcare, like daycare.
Right.
They said it's about $10,000 a year average. It's around $20,000 in DC. Nevada's right in the middle at number 25, and we're about 9,600, I believe. And we're not a small city anymore, and we're definitely not a rural city anymore. So I think a lot of it is also just the cost of living some places. But that's still risen on aggregate, on average, all across the country. It's not like we were in the 90s and only DC and New York have become insane.
Right.
I think we're kind of an anomaly because despite our size as a city, a lot of things about Nevada are still a little more rural.
We're still growing.
Right.
Well, and it's only
still
going to
growing.
continue to grow. So why don't you close off on this topic, Nakaya?
I think we have to look at our family household and just make sure that we're trying to complete a whole family instead of, we have a lot of broken households right now, and divorce rate is at an all-time high, so that contributes to a lot of the factors with paying for childcare.
So maybe making smarter choices.
If I can I throw one more point
Go
into the
ahead,
fold?
James.
Although we're recognizing the expenses that parents have to pay, I'd also like to point out the expenses that children have to pay. And although that sounds outlandish, when a child is come to a certain age, the parents have come to the age of, say, between the ages of 60 and 80. And I calculated what that expense would be for that child. I mean, if you're looking at from a parent's perspective, they're expecting a return on interest. They're expecting their child to take care of them. And for children who then have to take care of their parents, if you're looking at a yearly expense of $5,000, it comes out to $100,000 for 20 years of taking care of their parents. So although we should analyze how much the parent is spending on the children, we should also analyze how much the child has to pay to take care of
That
their
would
parents.
definitely be a good topic and for one of our upcoming shows. Moving on to our next topic, the University of New York Buffalo Law School and University of Iowa College of Law have dropped the LSAT as part of their admissions process. They have stated that they will admit students based on their grades from undergraduate school and scores on other standardized tests. In the past, however, the LSAT has been cited as a good measure of law school performance. Has the LSAT merely become a test to get into law school and not an indicator of potential school performance? And will abandoning the LSAT become a growing trend?
From what I've seen, most of the cause of this is the drop in interest in law school. And in 2010 or 11, law school applicants were, I think they were an extra 30% above what some schools are receiving now. And on average, it's around 20% more. And this seems to me to be a way for them to get the money back that they're losing by losing candidates who may be able to do better on those tests but are no longer quite as interested. And a lot of that also, I think, comes from the market for lawyers, which because of that overblown school numbers in the early part of this decade, is the market's now much smaller for lawyers. A lot of people coming out of law school are having a much harder time finding jobs. So I think this is an injustice.
So you think that they should definitely continue to?
I think making it easier for students to get in is doing those students a disservice.
If I were to touch on that, I'd say that if any law students are listening to me right now, take the LSAT. It is a very high contribution to your profile in becoming a law student, because many employers look at that as well with your GPA, your SAT, your ACT, your GRE, what else other acronyms you have for me. But nonetheless, I'd like to just say that the LSAT, to a certain extent, is becoming less and less reliable in order to show the student's functionality or functionality in whatever career or workplace they end up going in. It doesn't speak to the effect that it used to, and because of so, is showing certain inaccuracies in the graduating classes. I mean, you're looking at employers relying on things in the LSAT to take a complete analysis of whatever student they're hoping to hire, and I think that is something that is, like you said, unfair. It is unfair to judge a student just by one study and be reliant on that and not look at the other qualities.
What about standardized tests at large, so GREs?
I believe that we should look at a number of those tests, a number of those exams. We shouldn't be reliant on just one test. I mean, how would you like it if one exam from whatever class you hated represented the entirety of your education?
Well, it's not just the exam, right? It's overall transcripts,
Sure.
GPA, so it's
But
at large.
But nonetheless, that comes in some sort of lump sum to the employer. That comes in, let's say for this example, a package that the employer gets of the student's profile. And when they look at that, that speaks to the employer more than the other qualities. And because so is unfair. I mean, one quality shouldn't speak to any more amount than any other exam that you've taken for the majority of your law education.
Yeah, I'm against standardized testing. I believe at least have multiple varieties of tests you can take, but I don't believe in, just that's the way that you're able to test someone's skill level or knowledge level. And the colleges will definitely get what they're wanting, though, a larger enrollment of students with taking away the tests. But I mean, the real issue is, if they'll have a job available after that. And it's going to create a little gridlock, I think, with more enrollment but less jobs available already with the LSAT even in place now.
And I don't think it should detract from saying that people should take the LSAT. It should not speak for the entirety or a majority of that person's education, but nonetheless, I think it should be a requirement that that person take the LSAT.
Do you think it'll be a growing trend as far as
No.
schools
If
such
I am
as
an
Steve
employer,
Boyd?
if I am an Iowa College of Law and the New York Buffalo Law School that are starting to make this non-mandatory, if I'm an employer, I am looking for all qualities that speak for the person's profile, and I would suggest
Including the LSAT.
including the LSAT. But it's like I said, and no offense to Mr. or Mrs. Scantron, but like you said, when you look at some sort of standardized testing, that shouldn't represent a more or a majority of your education or the cognitive ability you have in the courtroom or any sort of occupation that you fill.
So now the employers are going to have to adjust. The colleges are adjusting without the employer's approval, and the students don't know, they're caught in between now.
Right. Jason, what do you think?
I hope they drop it because I couldn't pass the test before probably, and maybe now I can get into law school.
So, Nakai,
Easier.
you mentioned different types of testing, but how would it, do you have any suggestions as to how do you think they might be able to handle a standardized test and making it kind of standard for everyone and along the same lines?
I don't. I think anything that you're able to communicate with people, work in groups, or do any physical activity showing skills or action, then I think that's a good way of testing people rather than, sitting down and filling out.
I think one reason that law schools really like the LSAT is because although it may not correlate quite as strong as it has in the past with job success, it does correlate very well with passing the bar success. And so law schools want to pump out students, they want them to do well to pass the bar and to give them points to brag on when they're doing new recruiting classes. And now law schools have become, I think, fat with gluttony over the past few decades. And they've got bigger and bigger campuses and more ornate scenes. And now they've got to pay for it. And so they had this idea that the money's never going to stop, and now they've lost all these students and all of these fees and all these payments and tuition, and it's hurting them. You know, a lot of these modern schools are built on debt, like a lot of companies are. But unlike you know, some other colleges, they're not supposed to be profit models. Now, as far as standardized testing, you know, the people will tell you the SAT is still the strongest indicator we have as far as career success. But at the same time, I think a lot of that's because if you do well in the SATs, you get into a good school,
Right.
and then you have a stronger chance at a great job. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation where at this point, all the stats say the better you do on these tests, the better you're going to do in life. And that's because all of the gatekeepers still want these tests done really well.
To bring a counterpoint to what you're saying about the American Bar Association, I just want to say that if the American Bar Association is such a good, well, the LSAT is such a good representation of people that can pass the bar, my question is then, is it hypocrisy that the bar was the one that changed the rules so that you can allow 10% of people that didn't pass the LSAT or didn't take the LSAT into the classes?
And we have to think about all these tests, standardized tests, they're companies too. So they want their
Be
money
losing
and
a
they
lot
want
of
people taking
Everyone
it.
wants a
and
good lawyer.
There's a certain way you have to buy a bunch of materials fit for that test to study for it.
Okay, well, we'll see what kind of emerging trend comes up with standardized tests. We'll take a short break, but stay with us.
That moment, these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference right here in my community.
Be there for your community at NationalGuard.com.
Oh, hey, bud. Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to ask you, is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No?
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
When I was 16, I was in a bad car accident, and the doctors told me I would never stand again. Somehow, I knew I would. Progress has been slow, but family, friends, and strangers all started to pray for me. Whether you need support in a tragedy or just to make it through a bad day, prayer can make a difference. America, let's come together by believing with each other. For someone to come alongside you and say, I'm going to believe with you, it means a lot.
Help support the Breast Cancer Patient Education Act, a bill that will help make sure women facing a mastectomy are told all their options about breast reconstruction. Visit brawdayusa.org for more information.
I'm Sarah Monteseoca. Welcome back to the Scramble. Recent lawsuits against for-profit colleges have begun to discredit for-profit colleges as poor job placement has become the norm for these colleges. Many of these for-profit colleges are receiving the vast majority of funds from the federal government, especially due to veterans using the GI Bill. Will for-profit colleges begin to decline, or are these merely outliers among the universities?
Well, I don't see them going away anytime soon because they're just selling a dream. I mean, people know nowadays that a college degree is needed, and so more people are trying to get it last minute when they already have busy lives, they already have families, and they're trying to get another job, change their career paths, and this is a great alternative for them because it's flexible with their schedule.
And as much as the name would suggest, places like University of Phoenix will not rise from the ashes of their mistakes here in the student loans. I mean, we're looking at these for-profit colleges representing 47% of all defaulted loans, as well with students. 96% of those students going to those for-profit colleges are taking out loans. So you're looking at untraditional colleges having untraditional conclusions, and because of so, you should expect things like this. University of Phoenix is the University of Phoenix is the country's largest university, but they've been shutting down places all across their campuses since 2012 due to the lack of interest and lack of students. So because of that, they're paying a high price for being untraditional.
I think the biggest problem is their lack of ability to produce really successful students. You know, they're not getting students to even graduate at a high rate, and let alone actually get good jobs. And the most damning stat that I saw, as I mentioned earlier, was that these students who graduate from these schools average less money than someone who just went to a vocation out of high school. And that means not only are you not doing your job, but you're basically just fleecing your students.
So you think maybe changing the curriculum a little bit might help? Or is it?
I don't know enough about their curriculum to make a real educated statement there. I really can't say. It does seem damning, though, their curriculum.
I think in order to answer that question, you have to look at the students and not the education or the curriculum. You have to look at students that are, as much as the stereotype would suggest, these are people that are single mothers, people that have unflexible schedules and need an education in order to seek a better, higher paying job.
But I also imagine, the ads playing on the commercials. People are just watching TV, seeing the ads, they're selling them something, they think about it, oh, I might as well do it, and they're not really even focused on doing that seriously.
And a lot of these workers, employers of these colleges for profit are, really, they get paid on commission. So they really need to reach a certain gap of students who enroll in their colleges. Jason, what do you think?
I think we've got a problem with the student loan situation because it's kind of like this capitalism thing going on. I think we just need to socialize all education across the board, and then this will keep college tuition down for us too. And then we'll just say, okay, schools, you get this much money to educate the people, and then you do that with this amount of money. Now we got this thing where people are getting student loans up, and then the tuitions go up because they know that all the student loan money is going to go in. So I think there's a problem kind of like with that. And then we're going to keep having these situations because people will want to get a degree, like you said, and they'll do anything to do it, even go to some of these colleges that are kind of
and the opportunity
shady.
that it gives veterans. What do you think?
Well, I think veterans, just as much as people who have unflexible schedules, are looking for colleges that speak to their unflexible times. Looking at online colleges, you're looking at places that are able to offer a lot more availability to when you're available. And I think that is something that traditional colleges have learned a lot more about. I mean, especially colleges such as community colleges, and I would say even UNLV has learned the necessity of being able to offer at all times an education, no matter what schedule. But I think when we look at for-profit colleges, I love the pun. I think we're looking at for-profit colleges being unprofitable in the long term.
I think that the problems are many here. You look at the students, and one reason why they have trouble graduating is I think they have less stake involved because a lot of the money is coming from the government. A lot of the money they rely on is Pell Grants and money that's not actually coming out of your pocket. And so if it ends up conflicting with your schedule, you may not necessarily follow through. And so you may enjoy your classes, but you're not quite as involved as yours. I've invested $10,000 in my education so far. I'm halfway there. I need to finish. You haven't invested your money. I also think it's tough because a lot of these students, were they great students, they probably would have gone to college right after high school, and they wouldn't have done something else first, gotten into the workforce, gone to the military. And I'm not saying that they're stupid, but just saying that passing tests or going to school every day and taking lectures is not what they're good at necessarily.
And I think that's a label that we need to make sure that we are making. We're not saying for-profit college students are in any way unless educated than people that go to regular colleges. We're just making the argument that there's an untraditional factor to traditional
in
results.
their acceptances as well.
Right.
As far as limiting or not, their standards may not be as high as private or different sorts of education.
But I think the problem is, not necessarily them not finishing, but the debt they're accumulating along the way. So that's the bigger issue.
But you're looking at people who are looking for a more flexible schedule, and because of so, they're not going to be as reliant as for things such as, well, as bad as I want to say it, payments. These student loans require a lot of time in order to take care of them. And you're looking at people that are taking lots of jobs, have children, have things they need to take care of. So if you're going to look at when they have the availability to take care of college needs, college requirements, you're not going to see it. It's null. Near null.
Jason?
Maybe the problem is that we shouldn't make everyone have to get a degree for every job. Maybe they shouldn't have that as a requirement.
Do you think it's the pressure they feel, so that's why they take on these loans?
I think it is, and also the consumerism, us selling them, or the companies, because they're companies, selling the education to you.
It's untraditional and will have untraditional consequences.
I think a lot of the blame lays at the feet of the traditional universities, like UNLV. I'm a non-traditional student. I dallied in college. I went and became a bartender and other things. I tried to come back, and coming back after having been in the workforce while still being in the workforce and trying to attend part-time or full-time, it's tough. And in a city like Las Vegas, known as a 24-hour city where half the population works, night shifts or swing shifts, non-traditional day shift, or if you do work days, it's hard to find classes to fit that schedule.
Right.
So many sections have been cut back since the recession hit that it used to be, you could find, okay, there's one in the morning, one section of this class in the afternoon. I can make things work. Now, if you're busy at 8 a.m., you miss out on a lot of options.
So these universities aren't catering to people's
Right.
non-traditional workload.
And all colleges are different. I think that's something we should accept. We shouldn't look from some sort of average college, a blanket college. I mean, I think Hunter can speak for it best as a bartender, that you're going to see people that are wanting to be mixologists more here than you will in Ohio or Iowa. There is an untraditional side to education for universities or colleges or wherever they happen to go. You will see business people more in business centers. You will see people that want to be mixologists where there's more bars. You will see people that want to be wanting to party at party colleges. So there is a different result for different colleges, and I don't think we should look at a college as being the same overall. There is no blanket description of a college.
All right. Well, on that note, that's all the time we have for today. Share your opinions and any ideas or topics you would like us to scramble about to thescramble.unlv@gmail.com. You can also catch full episodes of The Scramble at unlv.tv. For all of us here at The Scramble, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.